Check that you have the right ephemera in the right journal. Hello and welcome to the Treasured Page. I'm Melanie and this is our quiet crafting space. And it occurred to me the other day that when I make my eclectic throw things together idea journals, I am just pulling things together as they pop into my mind with no particular theme or any, it's just what the mood takes me. So looking back at this, where I was just practicing techniques and looking at my washi tapes and things like that, playing with maps and flora and fauna and butterflies and things, I've just thrown it into this little notebook journal. There's things in here that I don't think particularly go with the vibe of this sort of 1950s bright colours. I've got things in here that are definitely from old style, like this. So I don't want to work harder, I want to work smarter, and if I don't now like these things, these pieces, in this journal, will I prefer them in a journal where it now suddenly all makes more sense to have this lovely botanical image with the vintage lace in this journal where we are talking about cottons and lace and linens and French wallpaper even. Would I prefer that now to come and live here with the colour tones that I've got going on? Is that something that's going to look better in a pocket over here and just brighten up something? And in which case then there's another one which I just sort of took out of this one as well. So maybe instead of making more and keep making more, we've already got it and we could just clip it up there as things that we can then put into the journal. And then this frees up space to make, well, to add the things that would then fit more readily into this style of a journal. And that gives me opportunity to, you know, add my brighter colour things that are more popular culture and things like that, and just the different vibrant colours that I don't really want to have in here. I want the muted tones. I want this to bring a little bit of sophistication and serenity. I want it to come from a more of a forgotten time. So now I'm just thinking, well, actually this is a very nice vintage thing. We've got the blackberries there. This is more suited to this journal, and even this one here where we're looking at the plant samples and the bee, maybe the wallpaper in the background is more suitable to Betty and things like that, and not so much in this little collection here. So what, and that, so and that. So my journals are never done, they're a place to store things, and that. So have a look, what have you got? What have you got in your already made things that you haven't really decided completely and 100% to keep? What have you got that you could bring into your journal? Because I haven't stuck them down, I've just put them in there for, you know, somewhere to put them. But now I've got an abundance of bits and bobs that can help me decorate the journal going forwards. It's just another something to work with. So I can now tuck all this here, and that be things that when we create pockets and tucks, I've now already got some bits to put in there. That's a seed packet. Well, if we're going to be looking at botanicals, it all starts with seeds, doesn't it? So this is a nice little journaling card, and that reminds me of the marshlands where we've got the crane or the wild bird there in the marshlands that would have been Neston, and you've got the flowers and the clocks, the beetle that we put on there, and that was just made from washi tape. So I'll link the video for the washi tape, these ones, washi tape journaling cards. Perfect. So little journaling cards that will work better in this journal. because they're all working together already with their green tones. In fact, look, I've already sort of done it without particularly thinking about it. So can you see it all? They all work together as a collection. They didn't work very well in a bright, they didn't work very well, but they look lovely here. So that's where that's going. So I'm pleased with that, because that just means that I've already done the work last month or whenever I did that. So this is from a digital kit from Roxy Creations, from Rachel. And I thought this looked rather good to go there. And so if you've got anything like that, if you've got other people's digital kits that you think are going to add pops of colour and you really like them, then now's the time to sort of start finding little places where these could come and sort of put them in. If I put them around here for you, you can sort of understand how these pages suddenly go from to, oh, okay, now I get it. Now I understand. So that's what a digital kit can do. It can just elevate a very page into something a lot more interesting with very little being done to it. You've just torn that out. I've actually backed it with just packaging paper. So that's nice and thin. It is a journaling card and it looks oldie worldy. I've put some more stamps on the side there. But something like that, it's all, then that's it. You wouldn't need to do much more. I think we'll have the tuck. So for a tuck we do an L shape with the glue. It's always nice to have spots to stuff things in. So yeah, I think that's okay. That's just going to come down there, isn't it, if it's a proper couple of sheets of paper or something. So that's fine. We'll leave that to dry and come back to that. And then over here, I had thought maybe using this envelope. So I can't remember if I did a video on this envelope. I had quite a nice time just putting one together, but I thought because those colours worked there and the bee and everything, that I thought that looked nice there. And I think that could work as a hinged out piece so that I can have something in there. And because I've got that, I might like another one further back. So I'd have to make another one. So I might do another one in a minute and show you how I put that together. Scrap of paper. And you know how to make a hinge connector. Connector hinge. Put that in there. Alright, so that is now my envelope for which I would like a writing paper. That's nice over there as well. Let's have some writing paper. To keep notes about all our botanical finds. Okay, so this this journal is taking us looking into the history of plant collecting and looking at local flora and fauna. It takes us back to the 1900s, and it is very much in a time and a place where there was interest and intrigue amongst people to bring more, well, there was a love of plants, there was a big interest in looking at local plants and documenting them. And look at this, so this is Victorian England, Victorian times, they were looking for the samples and the plants and noting them down. Nobody knew what half of this stuff was, all these wildflowers. That's why if you look back in history for nature books, they are all dealing with wildflowers and maybe botanical, medicinal purposes, you know, for medicine, and also what could you eat as well. So there was the edible wildflowers, and people were foraging for them, and then you had what grew where, what grew on a cliff, to what grew in a marsh, to what grew on a hill, what grew in a field, what would harm the cattle, what would produce nicer quality milk of pastures, and you know, what was poisonous. So there was this massive intrigue to look into the botanical world and to find out what all the little plants were. But then in addition to that, they wanted to also look and bring flowers to people's homes, and that was a very Victorian sort of quest was on to find exciting plants and things. And so what we have with Neston and the botanical gardens that are in NESS was founded by Arthur Kilpin Bully. Now, he was born in Cheshire in 1861, and he was born into a very wealthy family who were cotton merchants, and they had made their money by, I'm even just about to cut it out, from the cotton plant overseas. They had imported cotton and were distributing it around the UK, and that was what his father did. So Arthur was he was one of 14 children. He was number 13 in the pecking order, and he had 10 sisters before him, and then there were 2 boys. And so the family business fell to Arthur to look after. He became a senior partner in the business as he grew up. This was something that he was, it was fine. That's what it's his duty to do that, and to fall in line and do what his father had requested of him, and that was to look after the cotton business. Well, it wasn't his first love. It wasn't what he wanted to do, and it wasn't really what he chose to do, but he did it because that's what you did. So what he wanted to do was, and what he then went on to do, is to observe plants. He was obsessed. He was very early on in his life had this love for plants, and he would go and look for them. He would go on walks to discover, and he would want to know all about them, and he would document them, and he would learn and find new varieties and new species, things that hadn't been discovered before. So he was what they called a plant hunter. He was a plantsman, a plant hunter, and he joined horticultural societies and set up groups and activities, and this is where he met his wife-to-be. This is where he met Harriet, who was also very, very enthusiastic about plants and her medicinal uses for plants and herbs. And they would document their finds, and between them they found many, many new varieties and species that we hadn't otherwise known about here in the UK. So it is down to those two and their plant hunting right in the early days that has led us on to have the knowledge of plants, because that was a popular pastime. So then they got married, and this is now Arthur and Harriet. And when you think of somebody successful, a man that has got his name known in the horticultural world and worldwide as well, because he then brought plants worldwide, you always have to remember that behind every great man is a very strong woman, or a woman rolling her eyes, in whichever way you look at it. But it isn't always just the man. They were a team. And also it's reported that Arthur was a feminist. He supported the women's rights movement, and he even stood up in Parliament for the suffragettes. And he had 10 sisters, and several of his sisters were highly educated at Cambridge, which was really, really unusual for that time. So he massively supported the women's rights movement and their right to vote, and helped advance things forward. So he was pioneering, he was a visionary, he was very kind, he wanted very much to make plants available to the average person, to anybody, for everybody. He wanted he wanted beauty to be able to be enjoyed by all. And this is where some of the storytelling's going to take us, because this is not just the story for Arthur, this is the journal for Harriet, the strong woman behind the man who then went on to do amazing things and bring beautiful plants to the masses. And his biggest claim to fame, many of his claim to fame, that he brought the rhododendron, the azaleas, and the primula bulliana to England, and then America and Canada, and out to Australia and places like that. And these plants originated in China. And so that is why we've got this fabric, I believe. But Arthur's first love, his first excitement, his first light bulb moment came from his love and passion and discovery when he went to France and when he went to Switzerland, because he was well travelled on the continent with his wife. When he went to the Alps and discovered the alpine plants. And his discovery of the alpine plants was a real passion. He then wanted to find somewhere, grow his plants and do his study and do his work and bring the intricate, exotic plants to everyday gardening. But this was in 1897, so it's a long time ago, and that is when he used the family business money for good. He then used his wealth to be a philanthropist and tried to bring beauty and culture and intrigue and a popular pastime such as gardening to the ordinary people, everyday people. And so what he did is he bought this plot of land. He first had to find somewhere, he was scouring the map. He was trying to find where he could plant his new finds and where he could cultivate seed. And that is what he needed, was a south-facing hills and good quality soil and a specific kind of soil. And so that's why, and he's from Cheshire anyway, that's why he came over a little bit into the Wirral and he settled at Neston in a place called NESS, and that is where we've talked about the silted marshes and where he was able to find that the rich soil teamed with the sandy, loomy soil, and the south facing was absolutely perfect for cultivating alpine plants. And not only that, but to then crossbreed them and bring them into from colder climates such as the Alps, being able to grow them in more temperate conditions such as the UK, and obviously wind and rain and all the different weathers that we see in the UK, they had to withstand that. What he then discovered was that if he can find plants that were growing in Germany and plants that were growing in Norway and doing very well away from the mountains, and they were able to grow elsewhere. Just because they made their start in life up on a mountain, it didn't mean that they couldn't be put elsewhere if the conditions were right, if he maybe modified them and cross-pollinated them with something slightly else and tried to develop a different hardier plant, something that would last a little longer. He then discovered that he could bring more interesting newer species away from Europe, but over from China he could bring things over, and that was of course a massive provocative excitement in Victorian England, where we were plant collecting and having a lot of interest, and it was a glory hunt to find these exotic plants. And where did he go for them? He went to the Himalayas. So pack your bags, ladies, because we are going to be exploring the Himalayas and some information and stories from there. But I just wanted to explain how exciting that this has been, just to do a little dig and see what's what. But also this is all just sparked off from an unknown person's letter that came into my possession quite a few years ago, sat in a drawer, hadn't seen the light of day, thought I would craft with it, wasn't really sure, didn't have an envelope, put it in one that I'd made, and then put it in a journal, only to sort of casually get it out and start looking, oh, what's this? And reading it, and then feeling kindness from the letter, and feeling that there was a bigger story there to tell. And then of course it has. And what I've discovered is that Arthur Bully and his wife were really, really kind people, and they spent their life and their wealth bringing things to others. And during a mining strike in the area in the 1910, 1920s, later in life anyway, when there was a big mining strike and the workers were struggling to feed themselves, Harriet fed them. She spent as much on helping the local men from Wales and the surrounding Cheshire area to have food and supplies. She spent as much on them as another lady in her wealthy position would spend on a car. And so they were good people doing good things in Neston. So it's just another report of kindness from the past, and definitely wanted to share that with you, of these plant hunters, because there's a fantastic, interesting story, and it is one of the reasons why people within the junk journaling world start making specimen cards and things like that. Well, now we can find out what that's all about. Really, truly, what were the specimens? What were they looking for? And I can tell you, because I've been looking it up. So we're going to look at making specimen cards. We're going to look at documenting things in a fun way, and just coming up with some ideas for the journal, but now coming from it from a more educated place, and really seeing if we can get it a bit more accurate. I just wanted to bring that to you and share. Also, we'll have a little look at how I made the envelope. So all I've got here is just my scraps. See what feels right. I've got a bit of digital kit here. I think this is from Rachel. I bought one of her digital kits and she had a tearing sheet. I think this is right, a collage sheet. I'm looking at it and it's got Dalian on it, so it must be. So that's Roxy Creations. I'm just going to rip down some of these because I want that and I want that, and I might want some of that as well. Yeah, so just have a look at your digitals and see if you've got anything there that will give you a starting point for a bit of collage. But isn't it interesting though? We have one letter and it's just sparking off all these little ideas. But yes, it is a really famous botanical garden, and it's set across, I think it's 47 acres, and it really is just on the doorstep of where Betty used to live with Bert, and where they went to church. I think they had a church opposite at one of the properties that they were staying, which I think was, it's not on the Burton Road. I think that's where Bert used to live. I'm not really sure. We don't really know, do we? But we can just wonder. And yeah, but this amazing enterprise was taking place just a few miles down the road, across the fields where Arthur and his wife were trying to get together a nursery for seeds. And they started their business, and it sort of staggered to its feet. People didn't really know what on earth he was up to, creating seeds. Well, it took him ages, and he was collecting the seeds from all over the world, trying to bring a collection of seeds to give to people. Well, people didn't know what to do with seeds. They haven't had to do that before. So there was an education needed as well amongst gardeners to be able to bring this new idea of growing your own amazing flowers. Well, it did. It took off. It took off massively, and he was able to have this nursery which he called Bees Limited. And Bees Limited then, for anybody in the UK, went on to sell penny packets of seeds in Woolworths, and they were the first seed packet company in the UK. And this botanical garden has one of the largest collections of plants in the UK, right under Betty's nose all this time. And it has been there since 1897 when they first began. And Arthur Bully died in 1941, so he had a long life dedicated to flora and fauna and bringing us exotic plants from the Orient, exotic plants from the Himalayas, and beautiful plants that we now have in our garden as commonplace as the rhododendron and the azalea, many other species, which we can have a little look at when I've looked it up. But yes, it was farmland in NESS where they set up, and he also linked up with the Royal Botanic Garden in Edinburgh, and he had a lifelong friend and mentor there of Bailey Balfour, who was the Regis Keeper at the Royal Botanical Garden up in Edinburgh. Well, that was of importance because up in Edinburgh you've got the cold mountainous hills where alpine plants could grow, so he could test things up there and seeds could be sent, and between the two of them they managed to achieve great things. But what Arthur did is, with his cotton business, this is why we've got the linens and the cottons coming into the craft, and why I'm guessing that the journal has got that, and the French aspect as well is because of the alpine, and also that he had a son and a daughter, and they were both educated at homeschooled by governesses that would come over from Germany and France and teach them the language, so that when they were going over to the continent to try and sell their seeds, and they are able to, the children are then able to help within the business because they are trilingual, so they could help, and they wanted to bring the plants to everybody, so they went all around the world. And so what he ends up doing, Arthur, is he gets a plant hunter, That's what he's called. He's called a plant hunter. He is George Forrest, the plant hunter from Scotland. And he was very brave and went out, and he was sponsored by wealthy sponsors, and Arthur Bully was one of them. And he commissioned George Forrest to collect and send back samples and seed from the Himalayas, all over, and do lots of things. Well, these two didn't always see eye to eye, because he was tasked to do one thing, but he would then go off and do another. And he was very much a hot-headed explorer that wanted to do his own thing and not necessarily do what the task was. But he did deliver, and they did get the seeds back, but he also did a few other underhanded things which Arthur Bully didn't approve of, and therefore their connection and tie was severed later on. And that is all to do with a little bit of smuggling and skullduggery, which I will enlighten you of on another video. But yes, so that's just an overview of the learning that's taken place just by doing a little research of Neston and the area. But I didn't just want to state the facts that anyone can find on the internet. I have delved a little deeper, and it is the story of his wife, where I'm basing some of my journal comes from where with an artistic license, of course. I don't have letters or anything, but I have information from many sources, and it is the wife's perspective that I would like to journal on, as if that some of these things may have been what was going on for her, living and working alongside her husband in a time that was hugely exciting, but also quite a offbeat, strange thing, where he had a very good job and all the backing of his family, and able to go and into this cotton industry business, but he goes and retires from it, and that must be a little bit of a worry, and to fall back on this seed company. Well, it did very well, of course, and now we're all able to know what a rhododendron is, or an azalea in this country, and half of us have got them in the garden, we don't even know it. And so they weren't from here, they're not native to this country, they have come from the Himalayas, and they are exotic, but not to us anymore, but they were at the time. And it's just hugely interesting, because we had been looking at that part of the country with Nellie Brown, and of course they were interested in their gardens, and there were mention of birds and things. Well, I suspect there was, because living on the marshland there's lots of birds, so it would have been something that they would have seen quite regularly. And maybe the bird rescue with Betty and her uncle when she was younger was just a commonplace thing that they did there, because they had the birds to be rescued. So this is some tissue paper that I've stamped. That's why I've got my little ladybird. So I'll probably want to bring in maybe the bee. So I'm just going to rip that out. And that's just quite a fun thing to do if you've got some packaging tissue paper, anything to protect shoes or new shoes. That's worth a salvage. When you see me using fluffy bits of paper, like a handmade paper, I've got a bit here with the fluffy edge. You could try, if you can't get your hands on anything like that, coffee filters. We don't use them so much in the UK, but I know that they're readily available in other countries. So coffee filter paper, give that a try. That would be good for fluffy backgrounds. Just to back things, it might be just the thing. That's quite nice, isn't it? And then what I think is I'll just I could do some stamps, so let's do some stamping. yeah, so the story is going to take us, well, to France, but also to the Himalayas, to China, and I think that would be quite nice to look at that through the eyes of the wife, who didn't go on the expeditions, and actually neither did Arthur, because he was very much needed to run the family business of the cotton industry. So he was doing that, and but his passion was these seeds. So yeah. So there, in their house, there would have been an abundance of cotton scraps. There would have been lots of notes and botanical interest. Well, so Harriet was hugely interested in plants, we know that. The husband's off doing a lot of the cotton trade business and working there in Liverpool. You've got the shipping. So he's a merchant trader, so he's shipping cotton all around the world as well. He's perfectly placed in Neston to be close to Liverpool and the docks and the shipping yard and all of that. And the business was there because I think they were called Bully Cotton. So that's a company we could look up and learn a bit more about. But yeah, they were definitely bringing in cotton from around the world to send back out to the world, as well as obviously everybody that needed it in the UK. And so he would have been busy. So who was doing a lot of this work behind the scenes? And I know who it was his wife. So she had 2 children, and they were very much a forthright, creative, vibrant family. And that is, I find that very exciting and interesting. And I think it's just not your average story. And I love the idea of the plant hunters and getting in trouble with people overseas and the Chinese authorities. I think he had to, they had to go through all sorts to try and make sure that they could bring back these seeds. And they had to do it properly. And I think that was half of the trouble, was that this George, bit of a Scottish hothead, didn't always go by the rules, and got them in hot water on numerous occasions, and that didn't go down well. So that isn't really what it was about for Arthur. He was trying to do good, and they were agnostic. So but Harriet's father was a clergyman, so they did have a very strong sense of moral right and wrong in their moral compass, but they were visionaries, and they went about things in their own way, but always with kindness. I'm going to do 2 script stamps, and I'm calling that done. I like that, that's nice. Yeah, so we're going to have one up there. Would have helped if I'd done it straight, and I think I want something different. And I've got another one here. These little funny script stamps, but they just sort of sneak into a little spot. Again, I can't read them, they're too small. So these have come from China originally, like everything else apparently. And that's the right way there. Just a little stamp there. Yeah, I'm not happy with that. Never mind. Then we come in with some washi tape and make it all better. Washi tape. Oh, well, we might want this then, because this is the Chinese one. Or it could be. It's got the beautiful scenery. I think we want that down there, or down there. Up there somewhere. Let's cut off a bit there. Yeah. It's got a pagoda. Pangona. They've got one in Kew Gardens anyway, like that. Beautiful. Tower. Just usually for ornate. Do I want the mountains? Oh my gosh, guys, it's got the mountains. Right, we better... Oh, I'll save that one. That's needed, isn't it? Mountains. Then we're talking about alpines, and now I've got the washi tape right in front of me. Excellent. So they're beautiful. So that might be the Himalayas in the background. There we go. We'll just have that down there, I think. Bring that round. Yep. I've done it upside down. Doesn't matter. We'll slit it open at the top like one of those slitted open envelopes, and that'll become a clock. We just get round it like this. Okay, pretend that it was up the right way. Okay. So there we are. So just a little bit of storytelling again, and a bit of history that affects us all around the world, because obviously the seeds were sent around the world so that they could be used in horticultural gardens, displays and everything else, and sold, and used for the modern day garden for everyday folk. And then that looks very nice on that sort of page there. So if we've got anything else of that colour tone, could even go at the back. Another one here with a flip, so we could have something like that, or it could be something... No, don't like that. Anyway, it's another little idea, isn't it? So it could go there and be something. But it's a nice little collage in any case. So a collaged envelope is what we're doing today. And I hope you've had some fun hearing about the story and listening to how we might take the journal, and if that isn't of any interest to you, then of course we've got the linens and the cottons, and we've got France, and you could just focus on all of that, because definitely Harriet would have had access to cotton samples, and she probably liked, as a pastime, or with one of the many aunts and sister-in-laws that she had, they possibly would have done embroidery and sewing. So there's that to bring in. And also obviously the botanical images, but perhaps next time when you're stamping them down, or you found a little image or a sticker, you might just consider, maybe that started its life in Neston, near where Betty then lived, as but this was all 40 years before Betty, so that's the scene was set for her. And yes, just some lovely history there. And the Neston Botanical Gardens were then bequeathed to the University of Liverpool with the express condition that they always remain open and available to the public. For a small donation, absolutely, but always they have to be available to the public. So if you go to England, and if you do visit the Midlands area, you might want to go to Neston Botanical Gardens in NESS Botanical Gardens. And I have attached a link in the description box below, and you can have a look from your own home at a drone flying over and taking imagery of the NESS Botanical Gardens as they were in 2017. And it's got some lovely classical music accompanying it, and it's just a really nice little relaxing view of all the botanical gardens that we're dealing with and talking about, and journaling, and just the things that we journal about anyway. On the stickers and tickets, just go and have a look at some of your supplies, and you'll realise that half of it has originated and started life, pioneering project of bringing plants, cultivating them and understanding them from the life work of Arthur Kilpin Bully. So there we are. Another little snippet of historic information to tantalise you with. And there we go. Above all, we're journaling with lots of botanics and samples and things, and now when we make a specimen sample, we can do so with the knowledge of that we know exactly what we're doing. We're dealing with alpine seeds and exotic plants from the Himalayas. Yay! Okay, everybody, so I hope this has been fun for you, and a little bit of intrigue of how you can put together a flip and a tuck and a tag, and then another flip out and another flip there. So there we have it. That's interesting, and that's quite flat, but with a lot of real estate of places to write. And then I think now that just wants a nice stamp of one of these beautiful little flowers, and just it's all flowers and butterflies and fabric and fun from here on out now, and just bringing some lovely ideas, booklets and some really nice paper. I'm going to be now having a look at paper from China and maybe some different paper folds and things that we might have seen from that region. So I think that'll be quite interesting. And if you'd like to send any photographs to me, you can do so by tagging me on Instagram. You can also have a look at some of the pictures here in a more close-up way on my links below to my Ko-fi page, and also Instagram as well at The Treasured Page. I hope that you found some intrigue here with the collage and things that we've done, and pulled that together quite quickly, just using scraps of paper. And it could be a digital kit, it could be paper that you've bought from the shop in your craft supplies, your napkin, and obviously stamps. And there we go, a little bit of washi tape for extra fun. And I hope that was good. All right, guys, thanks very much, and I will see you soon. I will be back at the weekend doing more in the journal, but also I've got the coffee pot challenge on Friday, which will be separate from this journal, and I hope to make some mass make things if I get some good prompts. And above everything else, just slow down and make crafting time for you. Bye bye now.